what I'm saying is that there is a process of change. There are stages of change. This is actually called the Transtheoretical Model of change. Just to give some context to what's going on in the change process, help sort of get a bird's eye view on what's really happening and what will happen. So seeing the road ahead helps to navigate that space, because it can be a little bit confusing, right? So when you understand what you're going to encounter, and then you don't feel so confused by it, and then it can help you keep going forward. So it's called the Transtheoretical Model of change, or the stages of change for short. And it just talks about anyone who's trying to implement changes in their lives. It's typically used with addictions and people trying to change their lives, change their behaviors around that, or integrate something new into their lives. So the first stage of change is pre-contemplation. Right? So this is, you're not thinking about it, you don't care about it, it's not on your radar, it's nowhere there, you haven't even contemplated it. Right? And then the second stage is contemplation. So now you start to think, something triggers you, maybe you step on the scales, or maybe you're feeling quite unhealthy, and then you sort of think, okay, maybe I should change, or maybe the doctor says something, or you saw a photo that wasn't too complimentary, and then that triggers you to think, okay, I really should start to change. And then the next stage is preparation, right? So as you realize, okay, this is something that I want to do, then you start to think, okay, well, what should I do? What can be done? How am I going to get this done, right? And then as you explore what you're potentially going to do, maybe you look up a personal trainer or some sort of fitness program or whatever, you start thinking about it and preparing how you're actually going to do it. What days am I going to do it on? How is it going to get done? And then the next stage is action, right? So, and something to mention here is that a lot of the time what people do, where people make a mistake, is where they try and just jump from contemplation into action, right? So in that, unprepared action is typically set up to fail. You're either way overestimating what you can do or should do, you get overwhelmed or injured, or it just feels like such a mess that it's just not undoable. So to actually spend some time getting prepared, and feeling prepared, and really grounding yourself in how this will be able to work, it's going to have a much higher chance of the action actually working, rather than just tripping over whatever you're doing and then going backwards. So preparation is important, and that's often overlooked. Typically, people don't get through all the stages if they don't do them. Right? You can't skip steps is something important here. At the action phase, they're probably going to be around 6 months, right, that you're going to be in that action stage before you get to maintenance, right? And then that maintenance is essentially, so some people would say there's another stage called termination, where it's okay, well, it's done, the behavior's completely set in place. Or if it was trying to eliminate a behavior, like say you were trying to quit smoking or something, then it would just be like, it's done. And maybe that is true for something like smoking. But when it comes to these behaviors that need to be continued in our lives, things we have to actively do, not just things we're trying to not do, those things require constant effort and maintenance, right? So, but then at that point, it's routined into your life. It's become you. You are that now. So it's a lot less, doesn't mean it's no effort, but it means that it's part of how you do life now. In the way that however you do life now is how you do things. So there's a natural drive to do them, even though they still require effort. So the thing is, though, right, with all this, so you can go through all those stages, but this is the thing, they don't. It's not just okay, you're on one stage now, I'm on the next stage, I'm on the next stage. It's that you go back and forth, right? So you can be in a place where you get to preparation, and then you think, okay, yep, this is how I'm going to do it, and then you go to action, and then you start doing some action, and you're like, this really isn't working for me, and then you think, oh, okay, then you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and try and prepare again. Okay, well, what can work? And then figuring out how you're going to move forward. That's a healthy way to do it. You go back, you figure out what's going to work, and you try it again. And then if that doesn't work, you go back to the preparation stage and you try it again. And then a lot of the time, what people do is they go to the action stage, they get completely disoriented and disheartened, and then they go back to preparation and think, oh, well, maybe I should do something different. But then they just think, oh, this is kind of too difficult, and so they go back to contemplation. I really should do something, and then they just think, oh well, screw it, I can't do this, and back to pre-contemplation, right? So yeah, then you've gone all the way back down to the scale, and then eventually you put on so much weight that you think, oh look, I really need to do something about this. Like, I shouldn't have stopped. Then you go back to contemplation. I really need to do something. Then you go back to preparation. All right, how am I going to do it this time? All right, it didn't work last time doing it this and that way. Right, so then I'll go back into action, and then and then as you're doing that for long enough, then it becomes something you're maintaining. But this is the thing: even when something's in maintenance, you can even be there. I can have been doing it for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years, and then something happens in life where things get really disoriented, and then you're kind of more in the action mindset, where it's like, a good example is, say for example, you move house or you move job, and now your whole schedule is completely changed. The time that you used to work out doesn't really work for you anymore. Your schedule's completely jumbled up. You're having to put more hours into work and all that sort of thing. And so now it's even getting back to the point where it's like, I was in full maintenance, and now I've had to go back to preparation to figure out how am I going to be able to make this work in my life now, because everything's shifted around and changed. You'll have to be doing that for long enough to establish it as a habit again, and a set of routines and how you do things. It's much easier to do it at that point because it's part of who you are. It's more sort of integrated into your identity to do those things, but you still have to build those habits and behaviors and routines into your life. It helps to know that this is a messy process. It's not one step after the other. You go up through the stages, and you come back down, and you go back and forth between them. And but it's about putting one foot in front of the other. Keep going through the stages. Keep allowing yourself to go back into those stages and then move back through them. No one just does step 1, 2, 3, 4 and done. It doesn't work like that. Understand that you cannot skip stages. You can't jump straight from contemplation into maintenance. You're not gonna go from considering a plan to just flawlessly following through forever. It just doesn't work like that. And they take different amounts of time. Some people might need more time for preparation. Some people's contemplation might take months. It might take 7. It might take 6 months. And then it'll take one thing, and then they'll say, all right, I'm ready to start contacting a trainer, contacting a coach. Then they start doing that, and then they're ready for action. And that action, they might be just dabbling in it for a while, taking action, but just making tiny little changes for a while. And that action phase might take 3, 6, 12 months, where they're kind of not really into it. But then it starts to ramp up, and the action is it's really just become part of how they do things. And now they're maintaining that. Another thing I wanted to actually just point out is that in regards to the weight loss and fitness activities, is that there is more than one aspect of losing weight and of getting healthy. And, two things I keep mentioning already is eating and moving, right? Eating and exercise. Those are two separate things. They're part of the same project, but they're two separate things, and they can be at different stages. There are some people who just love exercise. They do it all the time. And they've got no problem with that at all. They're in full maintenance, and they have been for ages. They train every other day. They love the gym. They do all that, but their eating is nowhere near there. They eat cakes every day, junk food and fast food and whatever. And they just have a lot of trouble being disciplined around that, or being consistent with what they're doing, creating that change in their lives. So you may be at a different place with the eating and with the exercise, and with other things like other habits, healthy habits that are important as part of this, like your sleeping, your nighttime routine. Because again, as I said earlier in the video, that we're replacing behaviors. Whatever it is, the thing that you were doing instead of what you want to be doing more of, then there are other bits to manage, and they all might be at different places, in the stages of change. So that does complicate these things a little bit more, but that's unfortunately just how it is with us humans. If things are way more complicated than we want to simplify them up to be. But that's why so many people are failing at their efforts, because they're oversimplifying it. Like it is what it is. It is complicated and has a lot of moving parts, and that it's just there's no point denying that, because it just leads to like eternal failure for many people. So keeping these things in mind, keeping this whole model in mind, can help you a lot in helping you keep moving forward. right? Like I said before, when you've got that vision for what progress is and what progress means and what it looks like and what has been successful for hundreds of thousands or millions of other people who have been successful. This is an ideal version of success. It's the real version of success. And it's that messy looping forward. But when you know what those things are, you know where, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is how it works. It's very encouraging, and that's, I think, is what is needed when you're trying to change your life, to replace things in your life, to go through that sort of that tense process of swapping things out in your life. Just bit by bit, you change these things. Not these huge overhauls. It's stage by stage, bit by bit, looping around forward, knowing that is the roadmap, knowing that that's the way forward, helps encourage you to continue doing it, and not just say, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't disciplined enough, I'm so horrible, and then, why can't I do this? It's like, well, this is the process, and that's okay. It's very empowering, I believe, to know this and hold this in your consciousness as you keep looping forward. So look, if you want to know more, if you want to be helped, guided through this process and dig into some of these things a lot more, then I do offer weight loss coaching. You can sign up for that down below. But otherwise, just keep following the channel, subscribe, like, share with a friend, and I'll see you next time.